lovely people! I know I've made a video already in the past about all things paranormal, but in this one I really wanted to focus on specifically spiritual ghost type entities and what personal experiences I've actually had with them. So I decided I wanted to share some of those stories with you guys today. Well, even if you don't believe in them, I always found that they make really good stories. Although I am kind of nervous talking about this subject because every time I do, I swear the activity in my house gets a little bit more interesting. But let me start before I even moved to this house. So this story happened before I can even remember, but my mom made sure to tell me all about it. So when I was pretty little, maybe about 3 or 4, my family had decided to go down to California to visit some family friends. And while we were there, apparently we decided to visit the Sarah Winchester house. For those of you that don't know, the Winchester house is this huge, crazy mansion that's in California that was built by Sarah Winchester. But the reason she kept building onto her house was because both her husband and child died at a young age. She went to see a psychic about this, and they told her that the reason that they died so young is because of the curse of the Winchester rifle. And the rifle is why she was rich and powerful in the first place. So in order to appease all the angry spirits that had been killed by a Winchester rifle, she had to keep adding on to her house and spending more money. I don't remember how much she actually spent in all, but it was a lot. Now, the psychic said that she had to keep adding on to her house, but they never said that her house had to make sense. But there were stairways that went on and just led to a ceiling. They had doors that opened to a 2-story drop, as well as doors that opened to a brick wall. This house even had 2 basements. But what does all this have to do with me as a child? Apparently, when we went there, I started talking to someone that wasn't there. And this place was known for being haunted by Sarah Winchester as well as many of the workers that built onto her house. So this whole time that we were taking this tour, I kept talking to someone that I called Mrs. Witch, and I'm assuming that's because I couldn't pronounce Sarah Winchester when I was a child. But apparently I was just talking to her like it was an actual person there and not just empty space. And also apparently this really started to weird out a lot of the other tourists that were there. My mom told me that after a while I finally started to calm down a little bit, but then we got to her seance room. And apparently once we got to that room, I just went nuts talking to, again, nobody. And then after that room, I was pretty quiet again for a while, until the very end of the tour, when the tour guide showed a picture of what Sarah Winchester looked like. And I said, "Oh, there's Mrs. Witch!" And none of the other tourists wanted to be anywhere near me after that. But it is something that I really wish I could remember happening, because I just think that would be so funny. But now let's talk about when I moved into this house. So I moved to this house about 10 or 11 years ago, and honestly, the minute that we moved into this place, I already knew that something was up with this house. Especially considering that this house was built in 1871. Just with that information alone, I figured that it was highly plausible that someone has probably died here. And I can say with about 95% certainty that this house is haunted. Not that I ever feel really in danger here, I just sometimes feel like I'm being watched. But our ghost was a lot more active the first few years that we moved in. I think it really started with the doorbell ringing, and there being no one there. And considering that our doorbell doesn't even work half the time when an actual person presses it, that kind of tipped us off that something was really weird. And then there were also times where my whole family, and I mean everybody, was like sat down to breakfast or something. We were all downstairs, and we could hear very distinct footsteps walking around up here. Not even any of my dogs were up here, no one was up here, and we all heard it. And now, some of this can be up to skepticism, but we've had things mysteriously disappear. And I will say that I am not the most organized person, but we've also had things show back up unexpectedly. For example, my mom was searching for a check once, and she searched this whole house for it. Every room, she looked under everything, and she could not find this check. And then one day, randomly, it was just in the middle of the floor, and it was in what is now my sister's room. At the time, it was just an extra bedroom that we used for guests, but nobody really wanted to stay in there because that room creeped me out the most. Pretty early on, my family had decided to half-jokingly call our ghost Ethel, and we don't really have any particular reason why we decided to call her Ethel. And we even thought that the doorbell ringing might be faulty wiring at first, until one year we had a chimney fire, and surprisingly enough, it was actually around Halloween. But apparently we hadn't cleaned our chimney enough, which started a small fire in the chimney itself. Fire department came, dealt with it, we haven't had one since. But that whole week, after months, if not years, of being pretty quiet, that doorbell was ringing constantly, and we're pretty sure it's because our ghost was mad at us for trying to burn their house down. God, I just feel like I'm being watched even more right now, and God knows me talking about this is just gonna make the doorbell ring again, because that's happened before. Like, I'll be talking about how my house is haunted with somebody, and then for like the whole rest of the week, I just get really eerie feelings, and I'll hear footsteps again after it being quiet for so long. So let's hope that doesn't happen this time! Ethel, if you're listening, I love you. Now, the next couple of stories I have happened before I was born, but I feel like they're interesting enough to include in this video. So when my mom was growing up, the house she lived in was definitely haunted as well. In fact, my grandma even saw it. But when my mom was growing up, her room was at the top of a set of stairs, but I think she said it was around 3 a.m. that she heard a set of footsteps coming up the stairs. And they just kept climbing towards her room, which is at the very top of the stairs. And she said that she heard them stop right outside her door, and right as she was about to ask who was there, she heard them turn around and then just walk back downstairs again. So then the next morning, my mom was asking her parents and her brother if someone had come up to her room last night. And of course all of them swore that they hadn't, that they were all dead asleep at that time. And there was nobody else that would have been able to walk up the stairs like that. Another time, in the same house, my grandma woke up one night to see a woman standing at the end of her bed. And she didn't feel threatened or anything, this woman was just kind of staring at her, but my grandma just kind of felt that this woman was just checking up on everything to make sure, you know, everyone was alright and, you know, everything was just going well. She even tried to wake up my grandpa, but he's oblivious, so he didn't wake up in time to see it. But then she just disappeared. So those are all the stories I can think of off the top of my head that have happened either to me or to my family. And whether you believe or not, I am definitely one to believe that there are things that we can't explain that happen after we die. Although I do think that most ghost hunting shows are kind of ridiculous. But I'd love to hear if you guys have any stories of your own, because I always think that they are the coolest kinds of stories ever. So if you do have any, feel free to talk about them down below, and I will definitely read them. And speaking of comments, thank you to those of you who actually sent me questions in my last video. I have enough now to maybe fill in a couple minutes, but I would really love to get some more from you guys. So feel free to leave some questions down below, whether it be asking what my favorite color is, or my least favorite food, or what I had for lunch, I don't know, anything. And I will be sure to answer them in the next video. But that is all I have for you in this video, so happy haunting, and until next time, bye. Did you miss me? So I ask again, are you gonna be okay?
No. I'm cold.
So I ask her if she has a room here, and she says,
I think so, but I don't remember the number. It could have been...
And then she started listing off a bunch of random numbers, to which I'm like, I